to the start of our the International Sustainability Conference, Suscon, and we are indeed delighted to host you, sir, for this evening. This time around, the Sustainability Foundation course that we compulsorily run for our students has been dovetailed with the conference so that the young minds get an opportunity to hear some of the great thinkers from different parts of the world. So we have got 251 MBA students plus a few PhD scholars.
Yeah.
We are also live streaming this on YouTube and Facebook, so the number of people listening would be much higher than the numbers that are shown here. So thank you for joining us, and I would like to request my friend and colleague, Professor Sanjoy Mukherjee, to kindly introduce the speaker and take this program forward. Over to you, Sanjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Kaputi. Sanjeev. Well, the person who's the distinguished speaker today has been known to me for almost 2 decades, and the kind of respect he commands and the kind of affection I've received from him for the last 2 decades, it cannot be expressed in words. Professor Laszlo Zsolnai is the professor and director of the Business Ethics Center at Corvinus University of Budapest, Hungary, and an associate member of Las Casas Institute for Social Justice, Blackfriars Hall, University of Oxford, UK. He is also the president of the European SPES Institute in Leuven. By the way, friends, let me tell you, also inform you that we are thankful to Professor Zsolnai that European SPES Institute is also an intellectual collaborative partner of Suscon 8th edition that we are going through right now. So we are grateful to Dr. Zsolnai for this collaboration. He has been a guest professor and visiting scholar at University of Cambridge, University of Oxford, University of California at Berkeley, Georgetown University at St. Gallen, Bocconi University of Milan, and the Netherlands Institute for Advanced Studies. His books include Ethics, Meaning and Market in Society, 2018, Routledge, Caring Management in the New Economy, 2019, Palgrave, the Routledge International Handbook of Spirituality in Society and the Professions, 2019, Routledge, and Responsible Research for Better Business, 2020, Palgrave. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. His wisdom, his publications, his stature cannot be captured in words. I'm being very honest with you and truthful to you. So friends, I won't speak much. His presentation will speak for himself. You just go to his site, Laszlo Zsolnai Intellectual Self-Portrait, and you'll find out what he is. And personally, he had been a great mentor and inspiration to me personally and in my academic life. Before he begins, I also welcome, I can see some of the European friends are here. Welcome all of you to this 8th edition of annual and International Sustainability Conference of IIM Shillong. Now the floor is yours, Professor Dr. Laszlo Zsolnai. Please.
Thank you very much, Sanjoy. And I am happy to contribute to this conference and happy to see the faces of students in Shillong. And I have a lot of experiences in India, teaching in Bombay, Mumbai, and Bangalore, and Chennai, and other places. This is the first time I teach or I lecture in a Shillong. However, we have really a decade-long, at least a decade-long collaboration with Professor Sanjoy Mukherjee and other faculty members in the Indian Institute of Management, Shillong. And also because of friendship with Sanjoy, I know a lot about the the institute and the new campus and problems there, and perhaps during the lecture we can maybe not discuss but reflect on the problematic how to transform Institute of Management Shillong into a truly well-being oriented place. And because we are academics, we are teaching is to about the students, faculty, and other stakeholders' well-being at all universities. So to transform all universities to better solve happiness and well-being of people, that's a very, very important job. So in the spirit of Gandhi, I would say that we should start at home. We should start at home. However, I will show you some fantastic, innovative examples in business from India, Europe, and Hong Kong. Business organizations which transform themselves into a truly well-being-oriented organization, and they redevelop their business model and something. So this is what we can do in the next 44. I am not sure that I can do it. The host, Sanjoy, the host disabled participants screen sharing. So I don't know how to.
No, I've made you the co-host, sir. You can go ahead.
No, this is. Do you see something or not?
Yes. He's there.
Okay. So because I produced some slides with pictures and some stories, and just to illustrate the point. So I'm a business school professor. I'm interested in ethics, philosophy, ecology, this kind of high-flying things, but always I want to show how these ideas and models can be applied to business. So this is why the title is Business of Happiness and Well-being. So yes, first I will start with a country which is very far from India and not similar to India in any sense. This is Norway, Europe. And I selected this country as an introduction of the problematics of happiness and well-being for several reasons. First of all, Norway is always in the top 3 or top 5 in any happiness ranking of countries of the world. So it's really a very happy country. Also, as you know, this is one of the richest countries in the world. So I checked the latest data, and the GDP per capita of Norway is 75,000. Okay, $75,000. Let's compare this to India. $75,000. This is one of the richest countries in the world and one of the happiest countries in the world. But I have a personal, very good experience, relationship with Norway. I know this country very well. I have been there many times. I'm teaching there. Some of my best friends are from Norway. So this country is close to my heart. But so I can speak about this country. It's not my own country. I can speak about this country in a more or less well-informed, authentic way. So why Norway is important? And these are the lessons about this is just to a little bit inspire your thinking as to start. So this is World Happiness Report, The Secret of Norway. And these are, I think, very interesting. Which are the main factors which really determine this high level of happiness in Norway? And you see that these factors are not economic factors. Just one is the economic factor, is income, very high level of income. But all the others are not directly related to economics or business. So caring, generosity, honesty are par excellence ethical values. We go back to this. Freedom, good governance are political values of political institutions. Health, high level of health, Norway, is a complex phenomenon determined by a lot of environmental, socioeconomic, cultural factors. Income is the only one which is par excellence economic factor. So not the extreme richness is a explanation for the high level of happiness and well-being and quality of life in Norway. We have a lot of other factors, and we should focus on non-economic factors as well, including ethical factors. So this was just the introduction to think about a country which is not very similar to India, but extremely high level, represent extremely high happiness, well-being, and also in economic performance. So I think we can learn a lot from this experience. Also, the other Scandinavian countries are top 5 usually in happiness world rankings. Also, Denmark and Finland are extremely high. It's for rather similar reasons. So this is just an introduction to think about. So I will start with some philosophical insights from the West, because I suppose also the Indian students knows Aristotle, the Greek philosopher, about 2,300 years ago in Greece. He lived in Greece. He is a foundational figure in a whole European Western philosophy and science. So, and his ideas about happiness is very, very influential even today. And just very shortly, he had a concept. He called it in Greek, he called it eudaimonia. Eudaimonia was his own term for happiness. Eudaimonia, and this is translated into English as happiness or flourishing. Flourishing. These are the official 2 translations. But what is interesting, how Aristotle defined happiness or flourishing. Today, it seems to be, especially in a business school, counterintuitive, because he said, he developed a huge theory on this, but he said basically, you will be happy if you live in an ethical life. The exercise of virtues, ethical virtues, leads you to happiness. This is today, in this materialistic, money-oriented culture, it's nothing. I will show you this is a very deep insight, and actually it's very true. And modern psychology showed that this is a well-funded, well-established truth. So ethics, simply speaking, ethics leads to happiness. Think about this twice. Before going further, a little story from Oxford. I asked the director of our institute in Oxford a simple question. I asked him that, how do you define success for our institute? What is a success? And he said the following, let's never forget this answer. He said that I define the success of our institute if people and their projects are flourishing. He used this term, this Aristotle term, flourishing. So we are successful as an institute if all people are flourishing and also their projects are flourishing. I think this is a simple but very powerful definition. What is the essence of a well-being-oriented or happiness-oriented organization? This is an academic institute. So people should flourish. Their projects should develop, should flourish. This is the success of our institute. We go back to this story because in my view, it's captured very nicely. It can be applied to business, redefining the purpose of business. Okay, so think about this. What is success for Indian Institute of Management, Shillong? Happy faculty, happy people, happy stakeholders, meaningful projects, flourishing together. Flourishing together, that's success. And after that, money and all this prestige or recognition, all these kind of things will come. Okay? Flourishing together. Think about this. So, go back to modern psychology, which really support Aristotle. Because, of course, you know this social capital concept and why it is important for happiness and well-being. Because this is a well-established evidence in modern psychology that ethical life, a virtuous life, creates social capital. And this created social capital results in increasing happiness of people. I can lecture on this for hours, but this is in psychology, this is evidence. So Aristotle was right in a way that ethical life can lead us to happiness and well-being in a direct and also in an indirect way by a social capital, creating social capital. I go back to this point, but a little bit traveling to the east, to Buddhism. This is my specialty, the Buddhism. One of my research field is Buddhist economics. I would like just to recall the Buddhist approach to happiness, which is quite different from the Western approach. Because as you know, the basic insight, the central insight of the Buddha is this. Happiness is the absence of suffering. And to end suffering, you should reduce or eliminate desire. That's the Buddha. Actually, I think Gandhi was not Buddhist, of course, but this is also very close to Gandhi. So even Gandhi can say something, could say something similar. So the way to happiness is to end suffering, and how to do it, reduce or eliminate desires. That's a very radical suggestion. Also, modern psychology support this position as well. So a little story just to entertain you a bit about Buddhism. Now, this little story I think is very meaningful and instructive. A man once told Buddha, I want happiness. Like today's students everywhere. I want to be happy. I want happiness. And the Buddha replied, according to the story, first, you should remove the I, because that's ego. You should remove ego. Then you should remove want, because that's his desire. What is left is happiness. Okay? That's a very, very insightful story. We should go beyond the self, the ego self, and we should go beyond materialistic desires. And we will arrive to happiness, or we will get closer to happiness. That's a Buddhist insight. So that's modern psychology. Materialistic value orientation. This is Tim Kasser, one of the most famous and influential American psychologists in well-being and happiness research. Many psychological studies show the problematic of materialistic value orientation. I'll give you a story in a minute to illustrate this. So, if you have this strong materialistic value orientation, prioritize materialistic goals, money, wealth, status, power, this kind of things, this will not increase but decrease your personal well-being. Okay, think about this. Materialistic value orientation is a clear recipe for destroying well-being and happiness. It's not me, it's hard psychology. So we have a lot of empirical evidence to support this position. Just one story that's happened to me, and you as students will understand this. I was teaching some years ago, teaching in Milano, at Bocconi University in Milano, a top business school, actually an MBA program. We discussed the students, what's the main goal in your life? And one student, a man, never forget, he said that my main goal in life is to get a Ferrari, as soon as possible. I repeat, the main goal in life is to get a Ferrari as soon as possible. Do you know what is the price of a Ferrari? It's roughly $500,000. That's a Ferrari. You know this car. Symbol of prestige, power, richness, everything. So to get a Ferrari as soon as possible, now that's materialistic value orientation. Okay, we can discuss this, but if you want this, sorry to say, there is some problem with you. But this is just my own judgment. At least there are two problems getting a Ferrari as soon as possible. One is that this is not good for your own happiness, this orientation, this striving. Second, that was Paul Srivastava argument Monday. This is very destructive for the earth. Okay? So I'm not against Ferrari, but a strong desire, an absolute desire. My main goal in life, he said, that's detrimental. That's detrimental. So materialistic value orientation is very problematic. However, business is promoting this. So very shortly, economics of happiness. A lot of study, especially about the US and other Western countries, how money and happiness relate to each other. Simply speaking, we have an economics answer to the question, does money make people happy? All the students ask this, and all people are interested in this. Can money make me happier or not? So the economics answer is that up to a certain level, yes. To a certain level, yes. Money and income can contribute to your level of happiness, well-being, but there is a threshold. In the US, this threshold is about $15,000, $20,000 per capita. This is today the US economy is much beyond that, but this is the level which is more or less okay from a point of view of happiness. Beyond that, you cannot expect individually and collectively that with increasing income, your happiness will also increase. Beyond that point is no correlation. To that point, there is some, not necessarily linear, but is some correlation between money and happiness. It's a very long story and a more complicated story. So we teach almost a half-year course. Main lesson from economics of happiness research. So there is some truth in the common understanding of the role of income in happiness, but we need a more to that. Okay, but what we can learn from all this happiness research and from the Buddha and from Aristotle and from other great philosophers and ethicists, in one sentence, I would say, people make people happy. People make people happy, not money. In a more sophisticated way, we can say that this is well-established scientific evidence also. The quality of personal relationships is the most important determining factor of happiness of people. You can check yourself. Meaningful, high-quality personal relationship. This is what we need. Of course, we need money. Of course, we need material things, some good nature and social environment, all these kind of things. But basically, these determine the level of happiness and the level of well-being, what you will have. People make people happy. And also, you need a purpose, a meaning, a meaningful life to be happy or to experience high level of subjective well-being. This is what the so-called positive psychology established. But I think it's very simple to just remember this one sentence. People and not money, it makes people happy. Yeah, we can discuss this, but we have enormous evidences to support this. So this was something about the ethics and philosophy of happiness and well-being. And I would like to jump into business, because that's nice, but we are business school guys. What we can do with this? Okay, so jumping into business. These two main concepts and the difference between these two, I think, very crucial to understand. Wealth, financial wealth, versus well-being. So financial wealth is a one-dimensional concept, okay, financial wealth. Well-being is a multidimensional concept. And if we think about well-being, there are, as I tried to show you, there are financial, economic, and non-financial, non-economic components of well-being. In this figure, there are 6 main aspects, but anyway, it's a multidimensional, multifaceted concept. If we want to maximize wealth, it's very different than if we want to maximize well-being. So this is not just philosophy, because we live in a world dominated by mainstream businesses, especially corporations, international, large international corporations, which create financial wealth for their owners or shareholders. They think this is their job. But they are doing this at the expense of nature, society, and future generations. Paul Srivastava very nicely showed this and showed some very dramatic data about this on Monday. Actually, 100 major corporations today destroy the earth mostly. They are accountable for almost 2/3 or more of total CO2 emission today. Just 100 big corporations. So, but anyway, their business model somehow determine their behavior. They have business models which want to maximize one variable, financial wealth for the owner or shareholders. This is our biggest problem these days. Srivastava is speaking about great accelerate, all this kind of thing. From a business point, that's the crux of the problem. That's the main problem. So we need different business models, and with Paul Srivastava and others, we are working on this, redefining the purpose of the firm. I refer here to Bruno Frey, a famous economist from Switzerland, University of Zurich, but also many others, saying that instead of maximizing profit or shareholder value, a firm should maximize well-being of all the stakeholders. These are two very different directions: maximizing well-being or maximizing profit. Profit is important, but profit is a byproduct of a good business functioning and not the main goal. So we are working on this, and this is the central proposition. But we suggest with Paul Srivastava, the Wellbeing Organizations, business or non-business, or including universities or NGOs or others, Wellbeing Organizations co-jointly create well-being for people and for nature. For people and also for nature. Ecological regeneration is crucial for the true well-being of people. So these two things, ecology and human well-being, should be combined in a creative, meaningful way. And this organization main purpose is to contribute to the flourishing of life, both human and non-human life, including future lives on Earth. So this is the central proposition, and we are working on this. We are collecting different practical working models of business and non-business from all over the world, including India. There's also US, Europe, Australia, even Japan. So before stopping, I selected just 3, just to capture your imagination. How another well-being-oriented world, business function is possible. The first is India. I suppose that at least some of you knows Organic India. This is a company in Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh, very successful and very famous also internship company producing organic herbs, including Tusli and others, and agriculture organic, in an organic way, in a very exemplary way, and also very high level ethics and responsibility for the farmers and so on and so. But I like this company very much because in addition to all these nice things, they are able to regenerate the soil. Okay? You understand the soil is a living part of the land. The soil is a fertile part of the land. And if we destroy the soil, we will die. So they are able to increase the quality of the soil, not decrease. Because modern industrialized agriculture destroyed the soil. But organic India, with organic methods, regenerate the soil. That's fantastic. So this is a truly win-win-win business model. People, farmers, local communities, soil, nature, and also the customers win. There are very nice videos. You can visit the website of Organic India. Very nice videos there. So I highly recommend to study this example. So India can be proud of this Organic India business model. Another is from Hong Kong. This is a Buddhist initiative, Green Monday, called Green Monday. And these Buddhist guys, not much older than you, so 30-something, too, started this some 10 years ago, because the problem was, it's a long story, but in short, the meat consumption in Hong Kong is the highest in the world. Per capita meat consumption, highest in the world. And you know, they're eating meat, is a big problem. Directly, indirectly, ecologically, socially has so. So they started, good Buddhists, to reduce meat consumption. And they developed some really creative, innovative business models how to do it. And they started vegetarian and vegan shops, restaurants, and huge campaigns targeting the young generation in Hong Kong. And also later on in the US and Europe. So Green Monday is not just in Hong Kong, but also also Berkeley and so on. Major campuses all over the world. And surprisingly, they made really a fantastic success in reducing meat consumption in Hong Kong, because they changed the desire of people. Green Monday suggests that first we should start on Monday, not to eat meat on Monday. It's the Green Monday. But this is a symbol. And they just promoted this very successfully. So targeting the desire of people, okay, and changing the behavior and attitudes. This is a fascinating story, but we don't have too much time. And before I know that it's evening in Shillong. The final example, what I would like to show very shortly, is ethical sustainable banking. I graduated in finance, so I'm interested in banking, ethical banking. So this is a pioneer, Holland, the Netherlands, Triodos Bank. This is the most developed, and it's really a pioneer in ethical, social, and environmental and sustainability banking. And the Triodos use very careful way this triple bottom line model. So they are really evaluating every financial options in 3 dimensions simultaneously, from ecological point of view, ethical, social point of view, and financial point of view. And they make decisions convergently using these 3 criteria in a very strict way. But this is a private bank, medium-sized private bank, very successful and really flourishing. So just one illustrative points and go to the final summarizing slide, that in the last 3 decades, 30 years, this private bank is a for-profit. It's a very profitable bank. This for-profit bank, it's a private bank, financed and helped and supported more sustainability project in the Netherlands than the Dutch government. Okay, than the Dutch government. So this is a private bank. So I would like to conclude soon. For your further study and further consideration, this is a Wellbeing Economy Alliance. I think Srivastava was referring to this. This is a very rich, very innovative global network. This is a website. You can visit that. You can find 1,000, really 1,000 of fantastic innovative examples, well-being oriented cities, companies, communities, or countries who are part of this huge movement. So I really suggest to visit this website and to learn more. So the last thing what I would like to present is a personal thing, a little, if I can say, a little present for you. My India, my story with India, a real case. That's the last thing. This is Ladak, Zangla, small village in high Himalayas, above 3,500 meters. That's Zangla. With some friends from Hungary, architects and economists, sociologists, and with all students your age. We are working in Zangla, a small village in Ladak, for more than 10 years. I am not the leader of this project. I am just a supporter and advisor of the project. The leader is Balázs Irmiás, a fantastic architect, Hungarian architect from Budapest. But what we are doing together with local people, this picture is local people, all students, local children, because this is their school, and the Hungarian professional architects and sociologists together. So the essence of this project, we have some very nice videos about this, and I will not show the videos, but give you a reference to this, to combine the best available Western technology, solar technology, with local knowledge, focusing on local needs of people, really embed the project into the socio-cultural and ecological environment of Zangla, Zanskar, and we were able to build, with the help of local, with the help of local people, with the help of all students who are volunteers. They are not paid, they pay for the possibility to work for Zangla people and with these architects and other professions. to zero emission, absolutely zero emission solar schools, not just one. This is the biggest, but there are two more in a neighboring smaller villages for children. Just to imagine, I don't know how much you know Ladak. During the winter, and I stop, during the winter, these students cannot go to school for 3, 4, 5 months because of the extreme winter. There is no heating in these buildings. They cannot go to the school. Okay? No, they can go to the school because there is a solar powered, very nice heating during the extreme winter in high Himalayas. But more important, what is success? Flourishing. To live together, to work together, to try to develop together, flourish together with these local, very poor people. Okay? And I'm very proud that all students from here, from Budapest, I don't know, 6,000 kilometers or more, going there every summer, not because of the COVID this year or last year, but every summer to work there for free. And believe or not, these days, this journey, this opportunity is so popular that there is a huge waiting list. There is a strong competition among the students to be part of this team, because in one time, not more than 40 students can work there. Okay, so that's success. Now, this is all contribution to India. There's little contribution, but I think meaningful and also symbolic. So this is what we do for India in India. Focusing on well-being and ecology. So this is a video about this whole project. You can see that later on, but I would stop and thank you very much. It was my pleasure to talk to you and to share some ideas and some experiences about well-being, happiness and well-being and implications for business. So thank you.
Sir, you are muted. Sanjay sir, you are muted.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Laszlo, for enlightening us with your inspiring presentation, which covered not just Europe, but the world over, including India. The contributions that we are receiving from Europe to India towards creating a solar school, the example of Organic India, the understanding of happiness. So now I would request whatever time is left, Professor Kakoti, Sanjeev, where are you, sir?
Yes, I'm there.
Yeah, if you could.
All with what Professor Laszlo had to say. This was very, very interesting. And I'm sure the students must have enjoyed it immensely. Should there be any questions, people could raise their hands. And the first person of the blocks is Lakshmi Kumari, followed by Jai Kishan. Please make it brief because we don't have too much of time left. Lakshmi Kumari, please.
Hello, sir. I'm Lakshmi. Good evening, sir. First. So my question would be, I would like to take you back to the slides where you were discussing what is happiness. So you discussed that people make people happy. That is the personal relationship is the most important determinant of happiness. Okay, so to be in a personal relationship can make people happy. But in the previous slide, we also discussed about Buddha's philosophy, like happiness is the elimination from any kind of desires. So don't you think that to be in a personal relationship, it means that we are expecting something from the other person, or we are desiring? So if there is desire, so how can people be happy? Like they can be happy for some time, small amount of time, but they cannot be achieve ultimate happiness there, right?
Yeah. So I don't see, thank you. That's an important question. I don't see any contradiction because first of all, we should understand eliminating or reducing desire means in Buddhism, at least in my interpretation, reducing or eliminating most of the materialistic desires, okay? So materialistic value orientation, these desires. But the second, more important, reducing or eliminating desires means that you should go beyond attachment.
Yeah.
Attachment is crucial in Buddhism. So not desire per se is a problem. Attachment to the subject of desire is a problem. So I can give you many examples. Even you can wish to get money. No problem. I'm not against money. But a strong desire, an attachment, attachment works something like heroin or cocaine addiction is addiction, attachment. We should cut this link with attachment. So you can get money, you can get a nice house, whatever you wish, in a non-attached way. This is called detached. But Buddhism suggests, what I suggest, is some detached involvement. Detached. So you are free from your desire. That's detachment. Okay? So, but also, even I don't want to overcomplicate this, but this works in personal relationships. If you are so attached to a person because you love him or her, if you are so attached, but you can lose him or her because he or she can die, or for other reason you can lose the other person. So you cannot be, at least it's not wise to be so strongly, hopelessly attached to even the most loved person in your life, because this creates problems. So in European literature, I don't know, William Shakespeare, Romeo and Julieta is a prime story in Europe about too much, this is a lover, a famous lover, Romeo and Julieta. They loved they attached to each other. They loved so much each other that finally they killed each other. So, but anyway, so attachment is a problem. Too much desire is a problem. Attachment is a problem. We should work against attachment in this sense. But simply speaking, I think this is also Gandhi. We should reduce our material desires, not to zero. I'm not against a good life. No, but a much lower level. It's a much lower level, at least in the West. So this is my answer to the desire attachment problematic. It's very good to reduce what you desire for. This is a nice spiritual exercise, good for your health, good for your happiness, very good for the world. I decided 15 years ago to become vegetarian for ethical, ecological, spiritual reasons. That's liberation. Good for everybody, especially for the animals. It's liberation. In a non-attached way, you can enjoy life more. There's no addiction. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, the clock keeps on ticking, And even though there are 3 other hands raised, I don't think we would have the time for any more. Maybe just one question, and the other person could be Jai Kishan. If
One
you can
question.
be very brief.
Yes, sorry for keeping the video off, sir. The bandwidth is low.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. So, sir, on extending the case for happiness in organizations to happiness in day-to-day lives, I wanted to ask that what we as individuals can do to inculcate happiness daily in our lives and form more meaningful connections with people, whoever we meet. What practically we can, some steps that we can adopt in our lifestyle.
Yes. So I can give a short answer or a very long answer, but you can do a lot of things. But first of all, and I will send it to Sanjoy to share, this American positive psychologist developed the fantastic practical steps, what they call a happiness plan. Happiness plan. Answering to your question, what you can do in a very practical steps to increase your own happiness and the happiness of people around you and your organization. I will share these slides, other slides with Sanjoy, happiness action plan, and that can be my contribution to your personal happiness development. So I can suggest a lot of things to you, but one extremely meaningful thing that all the psychologists suggest is to engage in socially, ecologically beneficial projects like all students in Zangla as a volunteer. Is also seems to be against the main ethos of our business, materialistic business civilization. No. The best thing what you can do for your own health and happiness, well-being, and for the world is to serve other people in any context in which you are interested, to serve others altruistically. That goes back to Aristotle, but also modern psychology of Buddhism. Try this, and you will be really happy. So all students in Zangla, working there in extremely hard condition, 3,500, try that. Hard physical work, 3,500 meter high, Zangla. And all of them coming back as happy. It's the best thing I've ever had in life. Serving people altruistically in extreme hard condition. Try that. All the psychologists suggest that. But I will send you this happiness action plan. Okay?
Okay. Sanjeev, we can, I think.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very
sir.
much. This was an amazing session. And we would like to thank you. Extremely happy that you could join us. And as a token of our love and appreciation, sir, we have planted a sapling in your name in our new campus. And here is the photograph of the sapling that we have planted. And just like your ideas, I hope this sapling too will grow. Thank you very much. It's for you, sir.
Thank you very much. And my last comment is, or suggestion is, that for all of us, for all of you, suggest to work on developing happiness and well-being of Indian Institute of Management, Shillong, as an institute, and also as a new campus. And I think we should work on that together, on that huge project. And I have some ideas what to do with the food supply and so on, so on, so. But this can be a joint, fantastic project to transform yourself into a more happier, more ecological, more well-being oriented place. So I suggest this. In the future, I would be happy to contribute to this transformation. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the offer. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
See
you, Laszlo. Thank you, Laszlo, for your inspiring presence. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, all the participants from Europe who spared your time to be with us. Thank you.
See you later. See you.
Thank
See
you.
you. See you.
I'm sorry I couldn't accommodate all the hands that were raised. Our next speaker is somebody, actually we can pick up from where Professor Laszlo left. He talked about altruism and working. Our next speaker has already joined us, is none other than Mr. Sanjoy Hazarika. Mr. Hazarika has been a journalist most of his life, but he has not been happy just reporting. He has wanted to make a difference. So one of his most acclaimed books a long time ago was on the Bhopal tragedy, Lessons from a Tragedy. And that was shortlisted as one of the best books in the nonfiction category then. He has made the Northeast where he belongs to Shillong. He has worked extensively in the Northeast. He is the author of a number of books, and the magnum opus is Strangers of the Mist, which is a must read for anybody who wants an introduction to the region. He has written extensively, worked extensively. He has worked in the fields of health. He's worked in the field of policy making. He was instrumental in starting a Center for Northeast Studies in the Jamia. So I will not stand between him and the audience. So welcome, sir, for sparing your time. And the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sanjeev. I hope that, the start of these things, one has to do an audio check apart from a visual check. And I hope that everybody can hear me, if not see
loud and
me.
clear.
Okay, great.
We can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's good to see Sanjoy Mukherjee here also, I'm seeing after a few years. And I hope you're all very well.
Yeah.
And I want to thank Professor Laszlo for his very interesting presentation. I've picked as my theme growth with equality or equity, bridging gaps, walking the last mile. And I'd like, first of all of you, to wish all of you very good health and wellness, for we are living in difficult and uncertain times. That explains why you can see and hear me, but not meet me. So I'm also privileged to be at this session for the 8th International Conference on Sustainability, organized by the IIM Shillong with its collaboration partners. I'm especially happy because one of the key organizers is Professor Sanjeev Kakuti, a very resourceful and reflective scholar who is the sum of many disciplines. And one of them is that he and his family have been our old neighbors in Shillong, where I actually currently am. Now, I know it's the end of a very long day. There are 260 odd of you and the participants, organizers, panelists. It's the end of 3 long days in a not so normal world. I'm sure that some of these key issues that I may share would have been perhaps other speakers may have gone over. But I'll look at the theme here through the lens of a practitioner and also somebody who's engaged both at the field and policy levels. And often it is the disconnect between practice, policy, and field that leads to delays, disengagement, and even confrontation. We don't learn either from the past or from each other. And one of the first lessons of sustainability of the theme of this conversation, I believe a part of all our lives, that if you want to have growth with equality, if you want to bridge gaps, you have to engage with and live well with your neighbors. because you can change, people can change friends, girlfriends, boyfriends, spouses even, but for most of us, you can't change your neighbor. You have to live with him or her for a very long time, and I'm very glad we have a good neighbor in Professor Kakuti. As we've seen from the news of these past days, it's also true of neighboring states within a nation as it is between nation states. And to bring it down to a micro level between communities and districts, we need to see these as historical legacies which can be traced to colonial times. And what's needed is really better understanding of each other's concerns. I'm not going to talk about happiness because I think for 3 days you've been hearing about happiness. And a determination to find resolutions to difficult issues with an open mind and a spirit of dialogue. Now, this is easier said than done, because this, to succeed, needs to include people at the ground level, the communities which are most vulnerable and most knowledgeable on local conditions. For without them, it's difficult to think of long-term solutions to these pending challenges. But much of this is built on a key element that's difficult to define, impossible to see or weigh, but is the element, the core element in all our negotiations and engagements. It's a 5-letter word: trust. And I'll come back to this in concluding remarks and draw upon my own personal experiences to share some learnings that have enriched my life. I'll reflect on a few events that have influenced my thinking as a journalist, a researcher, and somebody who's worked in the field of human rights and access to health. These have anchored my belief in the need for good governance, dialogue, and transparency as the touchstones for sustainable change. So I'm going to take you on a trip to Bhopal tonight, on the night of December 2-3, 1984, when a chemical gas disaster overwhelmed the city. I covered it as a reporter for the New York Times. I went for a week, I stayed for a month. And for me, it was a case not just of the hazards of technology nearly 30 years ago, nearly 40 years ago, but it underscored the critical need to have robust anti-pollution laws as well as urban planning systems in place. The Union Carbide India Limited plant, UCIL plant, was built on what was the edge of Bhopal at that time, with state-of-the-art technology imported from the US. And it used MIC, or methyl isocyanate, the most lethal chemical known to humankind and which is used in industrial processes. Now, a concentrated drop of that can kill hundreds in a closed room. It was used to make the expensive fertilizer 7. When cheaper brands came in, the bottom dropped out of the UCIL fertilizer market and the plant virtually closed. It was badly maintained. At the time of the accident, secret documents that I turned up during writing the first book showed that the company was planning to dismantle the entire plant and ship it to subsidiaries in Brazil. Safety standards and protocols took the back seat. Safety checks by industrial inspectors were lax. It was a disaster waiting to happen. But what caused the high death toll in the Bhopal disaster? It carried off more victims than all the previous accidents worldwide, industrial accidents worldwide. There were 4,000 who died in the first few days. And the final toll was well over 12,000 in the decades to follow. One factor was weather: cold, winter. Inversion. Inversion means at that time, if there is mist or heavy gas, it sits on the ground and spreads across the ground. And when I arrived at the main government hospital, I could see only extremely ill and traumatized patients lying wherever they could get space. The death toll was caused by the high death toll, apart from the accident, the disaster, caused by the fact that human settlements sprang up next to the plant. It was initially illegal, but then legalized by local politicians. And this is one of the lessons of Bhopal that we haven't been able to observe or learn really well, that human habitation should not come up next or around toxic and hazardous industrial units, or that political exigency should not trump health and safety considerations. What it did do, what the disaster did do, was kickstart air pollution measurements and also a law on the transportation of hazardous substances. And it was a benchmark for all of that across different parts of the world, not just in India. Because it showed the double standards also of multinational corporation technology. I remember the design engineer who helped put the plan together. He came to review the disaster. He was asked about the design. And he said it was exactly the same as the one in Institute, West Virginia. Well, he wasn't telling the truth, to put it mildly. The facility in the US was computerized, but in Bhopal, workers and neighbors outside the plant got to know that there was a leak from a smell in the air. One of the lessons of Bhopal was really of the inequality of human life. This is something that the COVID pandemic also has shown, especially the second wave. Yet death remains the great equalizer. And I doubt whether there is anyone in this room whose life has not been touched or who does not know friends, colleagues, family members who've suffered harm from the pandemic. Let me just turn now, fast forward to today, this region we call the Northeast, where many of us are located. It is not the sum of many complex parts, but it's also part of a larger regional architecture of South Asia and Southeast Asia. We are located where Southeast Asia starts and where India ends, but also where Southeast Asia ends and India begins. This is its natural location, and natural advantage calls for natural collaboration, but we've been really very slow. For those of you who would like to read more about regional economic collaborations and trade, I would recommend the work of Professor Prabir Day of the RIS. Now, growth and equality, one of the themes that I've picked, is really built on the premise of inclusivity. We may have missed many opportunities, but many still beckon to us. Being opportunistic is not always bad. And let me point out a few areas which stand out as examples of inclusive approach, and which have been in some places intuitive, and in others built on a complex weave and web of traditions. But we've not recognized these initiatives enough as examples to follow or emulate with relevant changes. Many of you are familiar with Nagaland. On my first trip there as a young reporter, I saw something remarkable to the village of Konoma near Kohima. Konoma, as you know, has a fairly colorful and legendary place in the minds and history of the Naga people. On the way there, I saw graves and memorials erected to honor fighters, but these are not of the Indian Army. They were of Nagas who died fighting the Indian Army. But it is intuitive vision and perspective which has ensured that these symbols of resistance have been untouched and unharmed in India, and it represents a great tribute to the power of a democracy to embrace one's opponent and through that process heal hurts. So inclusivity was inbuilt into democratic systems and not offended by social posts, angry words, or agitations. The second is the experiment and experience of Nagaland, first with Article 350, which ensured that land and forests remained with local communities, including minerals, as well as the village development boards, which grew out of the experience of a young officer at that time called Vijay Gokhale, who later became the chief secretary, which was an example of planning and development at the grassroots. This built on the second quality of social capital in the community. And in the years of a successor chief secretary called Raghav Pandey, led to the Communitization Act in Nagaland, where education and other departments where people could pay their bills, for instance, the power, and be taxed by local councils, not by the state. This may not have worked very well, but the initiative showed promise and flexibility in the system. Numbers on India's periphery, where they show how one of the major challenges in our region is the lack of robust data. Now, let me explain. About over a decade ago, the Northeastern Council, which is also located here, the NEC, had entrusted the work of a people's vision for the Northeast to the Center for Northeast Studies and Policy Research. We led a network of about 20 partner NGOs for the document with about 100 enumerators. And the approach was, you do 10% of the population in villages recorded in the census. Priority would be given to BPL families, households. One day we received a phone call from Nagaland, and the enumerator asked a question which took me back. He said, you wanted 10% of households for villages for the survey. How do you do 10% of 19 households? So I asked for a clarification. What do you mean? He said that the census was showing 190 households in the village he was surveying, but he could count only 19. So someone had added a 0 to the 19 for the 2001 census. The problem of incorrect census data cropped up repeatedly across the state for the exercise. Sometime later, in an interview with the then and current Chief Minister, Nephew Rio, I raised this question. And to my surprise and Rio's credit, he acknowledged the problem and said that the actual population of Nagaland was 500,000 less than recorded in the census, which is not 19 lakhs, but 14 lakhs, or the size of perhaps a part of West Delhi. I won't go into the details on why it happened, but suffice to say that this shows some of the perils of relying on official data. Now, not all data is incorrect. Let me stress this, but a lot of it is not accurate. To Rio's credit, he got the village elders, the leaders, the NGOs, the church officials, and political leaders into a discussion of how to sort out this mess, and he was able to do it. It's a rare feat which needs to be acknowledged. Nagaland is also the only state in the country among the few parts of the world with the actual population growth. Because of this restructuring and recalibration, shall we say, and corrections in the census data, the actual population growth became negative. It registered the highest all India growth in population between 81 and 2001, but this contracted to the lowest growth rate in 2011, the last census. And many factors were at play, such as double counting of rural migrants in urban areas, over-reporting to improve access to welfare schemes, and a lack of uniformity between maps. So the media and politicians fuel the misinformation about massive in-migration, and consequently misunderstanding and ill will towards smaller groups has set in. And I think that the fact that no leading demographer in the country questioned these official figures, which contradicted each other for years, shows how poor our understanding remains. So manipulation of data, of course, doesn't happen just here. It's been well documented, seen in Europe, other parts of the West, in Africa, and in many parts of Asia and South America. You're aware, of course, from the last US presidential election, how Donald Trump had no compunction about campaigns of falsehoods and disinformation and bullying and intimidation to try and falsify election results. So the question then stares us in the face when it comes to disputed census figures, delimitation, or even contested state boundaries. How much data and how good is that data which lies at the heart of policymaking at the state, regional, and central levels? everybody uses data from their side and says that it's like the Holy Grail. But without an accommodation approach based on accommodation and mutual respect, no negotiations can succeed. Let me address a few larger issues before the region and then close with a personal story. There are numerous constraints which hold back development in Northeast India. It does include inadequate infrastructure. The investment potential goes up when one considers its geographical proximity to Southeast Asia and East Asian markets. But to reap this benefit, the region has to improve back-end infrastructure, which will not only help the region raise its competitiveness, but also narrow development gaps. Therefore, the role of infrastructure development in promoting sustainable goal, for instance, goals, especially Sustainable 9, is very important. And surrounded by international borders, infrastructure development, both internal and international, could be the best choice for inclusive development in the Northeast. This may be also described as connectivity to help the region to become more economically engaged with neighboring countries. This is already happening to some degree, but it's come to a full stop now because of the situation in Myanmar, which is blocking access to Southeast Asia. So, and this happens from time to time. Right now, the conditions are appalling in Myanmar, which is why you cannot move beyond a certain point. Now, there's been much talk about the India's Act East policy, and this is really a national policy, but now thankfully the Northeast is a critical part of it. But one thing we do need to remember is that when you talk about Act East, Look East, and Trading East, and Know Your Neighbor, is that a lot of this is based on the view that there will be a lot of international trade. But international trade, as you know, as students of economics and trade, especially, that it doesn't occur over highways and roads. It takes place over oceans. So, although I think these mutually beneficial projects have begun in different companies, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Thailand, and Nepal, there is critically much more that needs to be done, and we need to have a stronger network of cross-border production chains, especially with Bangladesh and Southeast Asia. And without the backward linkages that I've spoken about in rail, waterways, and roads, the Northeast will continue to lag. There are a few, as I said, some engagements and good practices which are emerging. For instance, there's the hospital in Manipur. We just set up a unit in Myanmar, encourages patients from there. I hope that in we can all hope that in post-COVID times, tourism will grow. Perhaps not the high end, but the homestays and niche nature and adventure tours, exploration of new areas. But this may not work very well if we continue to have an approach that's based on exclusivity, seeks to keep some people out and yet garner the benefits of being part of a larger country. If one group, it can be argued, if one group can invest in other parts of the country, why, the question legitimately arises, can others be barred from doing so in some areas? Not just a question of economics or trade, but barriers rooted in perspective and colonial laws which need review. Small communities do need constitutional protection. On that, there is absolutely no disagreement. But that protection and support needs to reach a majority of that population, which remains vulnerable and should not be confined to a small and powerful elite. Among the things that, this goes back to the issue of trust that I spoke of. Among the things that has been suggested for disputed borders, and this is something you might like to think about, was an initial idea by the journalist, editor, and scholar B.G. Verghese. Many years ago, he suggested that the disputed borders can be developed into growth centers, development centers, industrial units can be set up there to actually create employment for both sides so that both sides gain. It's not a win-lose situation, but a win-win kind of situation. I discussed this with him many years ago, and I said that, you're not really reckoning in the factor of very strong political views on this sort of issue. But he said that this is the only thing that could work, because it is not political. You take a political decision to do this, but that's what is something that can work. Whether that leads to happiness or not, I don't know. But it's certainly that is a trust building factor, because as for those of you who've read the Shukla Commission report, it identified several deficits in the in the Northeast, in the relationship with the rest of India, especially Delhi. One was the infrastructure deficit, the other was the connectivity deficit, another was a trust deficit and a governance deficit. To that, I would add the issue of financial discipline and integrity. I think that these are deficits which are in some ways being tackled, but there's really a long way to go. But I would like to come back again to the question that the point that I raised right at the beginning. And I'm conscious also of the time because it is close to 7:30, and it's been a very long 3 days for you. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. But I want to stay with this small, there are 3 slides that I want to present here, which will just strengthen what I said. Health continues to be a very major challenge in the region, both infrastructure and delivery of services. In Assam, the maternal mortality ratio and the infant mortality ratio are very high, among the highest in India. And this in a place where gender equality is highly spoken of. Yet domestic violence and child abuse rates are also high. So let me share these thoughts on inclusive healthcare program, which has run for the last 16 years, and despite challenges, will, I hope, continue to run for longer. I don't know, can you all see the slide? Yeah. So this is, of course, a map of Assam, and the dots which you see are actually the innovation which began 17 years ago at CNS, when we designed and developed what we call the boat clinic. It's called the Ships of Hope, but the boat clinic, which started in one district because it's a small story. Jahnu Barua, whom many of you will have perhaps seen his films and know of, is a great filmmaker. He and I were working on a documentary on the Brahmaputra. So we came to Majuli. We were crossing in a ferry to Majuli, and we heard the story of a young woman who died in childbirth because she couldn't get to the hospital on time. Now, this was no ordinary case. This was a young woman who'd had a difficult pregnancy. She was coming from Majuli to the civil hospital in Jorhat, which is across the river, but she and her family missed the ferry. They had to spend the night, winter, by the Brahmaputra, chill, it's damp and it's difficult. And they made the ferry the next day, but she didn't survive the journey. And I heard that story, I said, this is totally unacceptable in my own home state. I mean, I didn't even know such conditions existed. That shows how well I knew the state or how badly. So I did a bit more research, like many of you do when you hear something interesting or challenging. And I found that Assam had 2,500 islands on the river. It's a unique geographical condition. It's a sociological situation, a difficult challenge also, because there are something like 3 million people. 1/10 of the population of the state lives on islands. Most of the other people don't even know that. And the health conditions are abysmal, the education conditions are poor. So how do you deal with this? So I thought about it because at that time, Assam's MMR, the maternal mortality ratio was 492. Out of 1 lakh deliveries, 492 women died in childbirth, which made it rural Assam the most dangerous place for a young woman who was pregnant to be. Today, the figure is just above 200. It's the best improvement in MMR anywhere in the country. And it's not just because we started this work. It started in one district in Dibrugarh. If you go to the next slide. I'm sorry, I don't know who's handling this, but yeah. So Saporis. So that gives you some of the data. That gives you the difficulty, the challenge of vulnerability, the fertility rate. And 91% of the households lacked access to clean water. Can we go to the next slide? So in 2004, there was a competition, a World Bank competition, in which we took part, and we designed this boat. We call it a ship of hope in a valley of flood. I said, if nothing else, the title should win us an award. So, and we did win it. I wasn't surprised that we won the award. We got a small amount of money, $20,000. At that time, it was about 9 or 10 lakhs. And with that, we built our first ship. And I had to learn a lot about the river. I had to learn a lot about shipbuilding. And I had to also learn that you listen to the people who know the river and who know about boat building. I can't go in with an idea and say, this is how you're going to do it. So you learn from them. How many of you know that they heat, when they cut the log, they heat it to bend it like steel? That's how the bow of a boat is shaped. To see it happen before your own eyes was an immensely enriching and learning and humbling experience. So we started with our first boat there. I designed it to some extent in partnership with the local boat builder. And we started on World Health Day in 2005, which I think was sometime in May. And today we have 15 boats which work in 13 districts. We started with a team of 3. All of them thought I was slightly mad for trying to do something like this. They thought we are supposed to do research. He wants us to build a boat. What does that have to do with research? So it's got applied theory in action, ideas in action, applied theory. So we started this, and today from one boat, we are having 9 boats of our own. We hire 6 others in some of the districts. We have a team of 250. Each boat carries at least 1 doctor. It carries a nurse, 2 nurses, a pharmacist, and a pharmacy on board, and a lab. So you can do tests on the boat. Somebody comes with a problem, blood is tested, the result is found, it goes to the doctor prescribes medicine, the pharmacy gives on the boat itself to the patient. So we have been working now since 2008 for 13 years with the National Health Mission, and we will be doing that at least for 3 more years. And it's well known, I think, across India as an innovative innovative effort that actually reaches lakhs of people. We reach 3 lakh people every year with healthcare, and the focus is women and children. So I'll end with one story, which again comes to the issue of trust. One of our boats was returning from a camp in the district of Dhemaji. That's in northern Assam. And they saw this couple from a distance as they were returning. They saw this couple on really a spit of an island, a spit of land. And the couple was waving to them. And obviously there was some problems. So they came in, they anchored, and there was a child, a young girl. So they saw that the girl was turning blue. She was getting breathless. She had a major lung infection, breathing problem. But they had the medication, and it's always difficult to tell this story because it's very moving. They gave her the medicines, and within a few minutes, her color started returning. She started breathing normally. And but the doctor, I think the doctor should have been a journalist. He said, "You seem to be after the child was settled and the parents were calm, asked the question, you seem to be waiting for us, as if you knew we were coming. Why was that? How is that?" And the answer was so simple, it took my breath away. So the father said, it's at a point where the river merges with another. So if you go on this side, you come back in 3 days. You go on this side, you come back in 2 days. I've seen you do this for 2 years. And we knew you went on this way, you'd come back on the second day. Because if they were late, if they had just been a few hours late, the child wouldn't have made it. So that's the story, that trust is the greatest thing a stranger can give you, especially when it comes to saving his daughter's life. And a child saved, like a mother saved, is you save a little world that way. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was a fascinating journey through the Northeast. There is much more that this person has done. He's currently the Executive Director of the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, the International Director, working in different parts. The boat clinics have certainly been a game changer for the state, for the region. It has succeeded in reducing maternal and child mortality rates substantially. It is reaching the unreachable places, and it is bringing hope. So this is something that he has done. He has brought Northeast to the national and international forum. So the floor for questions, if any. The floor is open. You can raise your hands, and we'll take it one by one. As of now, we have Jai Kishan and Achinta Sharma. So Jai Kishan goes first, and Achinta comes in second.
Good evening, sir. So my question is from the last point that you made, that trust is the greatest thing a stranger can give you. On extending that, in current times, intolerance is something that has gained some amount of space in recent years, and trust and in certain times is becoming a luxury day by day. So I believe that I'll be happy if I'm wrong. But if that's the case, then what can we as individuals do, as a society, as a community, as a collective do, so that let's say I have more trust towards someone else, and even I can give someone else the feeling that he or she can trust me. What can be done so that the conducive atmosphere is of mutual trust?
Let me ask you a question. Suppose you suffered some sort of, so you or a friend of yours had suffered a problem, and you need to go to a police station to report it. How trustful would you be of the police station in terms of that your plea would be met, your concern or your friend's concern would be addressed, and you would, a person would actually pay attention to what you were saying? Yeah, a lot of it also depends on our own approach to things. No? So when one started this boat clinics, I had no idea. I was a journalist and a researcher and a filmmaker. I had no idea that this was going to become like on this scale. I frankly hadn't thought about it, and I was not even interested. I was quite happy for it to be in 2 or 3 districts, trying to work with the district administration and so on. And I think that it's the question of trust really depends on how you value the work you do, and the life you lead. Everybody's trust quotient or ability to approach others, have conversations, engage is different. So there can't be one size that will fit. I mean, that I think is also the problem between states. I don't know if that answers your question, but I really don't have an answer beyond saying that you have to trust your own mind and heart on these things. Because all of us at some point know what's right and what's not. And that, I think, is the case. Like, suppose you see somebody who's visually challenged standing at the roadside. I'm sure you've heard the story before. What do? You wait for 5 minutes, you cross the road, and you look back, he's still there, he or she is still there. What do? Would you go back and help him or her cross the road? So it's a question of how much we are prepared to do ourselves, in order to help others or gain their trust without any motive for it. I think that's the key.
I would want to add something here based on a conversation I had with you some time ago. One thing that Mr. Hazarika has been talking about is trust between...
I was trying to figure out who that was. It's okay.
Trust between nations. So India and Pakistan, India and Bangladesh can always be at loggerheads, but it can also begin to trust one another and work together. And this was said in reference to the relations between India and Bangladesh. Because ecology, like we have been talking for the last 3 days, is not nation specific. Ecology is something that transcends political borders. And humanity seems to have forgotten the fact that either we swim together or sink together. It is not based on borders. And this is something that he has been trying to do through his work. He's done extensive amount of work on the India-Bangladesh area. He's one of those few people who's done the entire route of the Brahmaputra, starting from Tibet up to the Bay of Bengal. And so he has driven from the northeast right up to Burma and other places. So what happens is the trust that he talks about is a trust that exists in the communities, but there's a trust deficit at the policy-making level, which needs to be probably addressed. Yes, I know that Achinta is waiting, and we are also ending our day. It's been a long day, so Achinta, if you can make it brief and concise. Sanjoy,
Thank you, sir. So, sir, my quick observation on one of the points that you had made in the earlier part of your deliberation. You have said that there is a disconnect between the practice, policy, and field. In most cases in our country, there is a big disconnect between practice, policy, and field. However, with your boat clinic initiative, you have very well bridged this disconnect. Now, this being a reality, the disconnect being a reality, in every sector we find this disconnect. Could you please let us know your approach that you have taken to bridge this disconnect? in your boat clinic initiatives?
Well, I suppose it's not part of government policy. Assam is actually showing the way to the rest of the country and the world. It's not my project anymore. It's not the organization. It's a partnership with the National Health Mission, which is part of the government and part of the government of India. So they are taking it on, and we have people who work in the program and help run the program. So it's really become part of the policy. And I know that there have been studies done on this. People have worked on it for the MPhil and other areas. I would offer it if any of you are interested in doing a short a study during a summer break or something. You'd be most welcome to come and see how a policy rolled out through inclusivity actually works better than a policy, a top-down approach. Because when I started this program, I did a survey. Before I went to any area, any district, we did a survey about 500 persons and asked them what were their main problems, what are the main issues. So the feedback came from the community. On the basis of what the community wanted, we designed the intervention in the areas where they felt was the greater need. That's the key, I think. You listen to the community and then you design it so that policymakers can see the value of it. And they did, I mean, the present chief minister, who was the health minister, has been extremely supportive of that.
Thank you, sir.
Right. Now I'd like to hand it over to Sanjoy. Sanjoy Mukherjee, my friend and colleague, for the rest of the evening. Yes, Sanjoy da. You're on mute.
It's a delight to meet Mr. Hazarika after such a long time. And I think last time we met when I was for 2 years in the board of IIM Shillong, and he used to come for the meetings. That was the last time I met him. And his very insightful observations. I've been always an admirer of yours. And after this presentation, I have a personal request. I'm going personal. I'm sorry. Sometime during my last 5.5 years of work life, would love to take a trip to Brahmaputra under your guidance to explore the Northeast, maybe with my friend Sanjeev Kaputi accompanying me to explore the
most welcome.
To explore the
you
heart,
have to,
which I have not done.
Sanjay, I must tell you an interesting story. I've
Please.
traveled the length of the Brahmaputra from Tibet to the Bay of Bengal, but I don't know how to swim. So I always say the river god Brahma is very, very kind to me, and to Janu also, who doesn't know how to swim.
So we will also receive that kindness, because I also don't know how. I learned it when I was a kid, but I can't bank on that. This is my exploration of the Northeast is very, very, very less even in the last 12 years. So I would like to do some of it during my next 5.5 years here. This is my personal, wish or desire, if you may say. And second is I have a message to communicate to you from a friend of yours from Calcutta, who was your batchmate, Professor Purushottam Sen. I am Calcutta alumnus. He's like my elder brother. I sent him the brochure, and he immediately sent a message. Please say hello to Mr. Hazarika on my behalf, because he's my batchmate. So on behalf of Dada, I convey his wishes and regards to you, sir.
I think we will conclude. This has been a very interesting discussion. I was telling the students this morning that the fact that they are students of IIM Shillong makes them prey to people asking them a lot of questions about the Northeast when they go for their placement interviews. So it is always better to be well armed about knowledge from the Northeast, and there is no better person and no better books than the ones written by Sanjoy Hazarika to give you an introduction to the Northeast. I shall introduce those books to you. So before we end, we have planted saplings. We call them the sapling of hope in celebration of life in our new campus, in honor of all the speakers and dignitaries who have been part of making Suscon 8 such a grand success. So this sapling, sir, is in your name in the campus. Someday,
Thank you.
maybe.
I hope I can come and see it in less COVID times and water it and watch it grow.
Sure.
Yes, we shall love that. So thank
Yeah,
you very much once again. And there are queries in the chat box of people wanting to connect with you. So I shall be the linchpin, the person who's going to connect you to a lot of other people who are interested in knowing about your work and stuff like that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I see that Prashant Borde has a comment, but please email it to me. I think Sanjeev will give you my email. Email it to me and I'll respond to you.
Right. So Prashant happens to be an army officer who's worked in the Northeast, who has worked in Jammu and Kashmir, and is currently doing his PhD in IIM Shillong. So I'm sure that he will mail not just this. He has a habit of giving out very long mails, so you should be ready for that. Just pulling your leg, Prashant. Anyway, so thank you very much to everyone. It's been a long day. We meet again tomorrow at 9:30. Thank you, the team, for flawlessly executing the entire day. Thank you, and have a good night, everyone.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, sir.
Sir.